What does it mean for something to be true? Look, I don't do drugs, and this isn't some new age postmodern horseshit. Just a little thought experiment I'm grappling with. What does it mean for something to be true? If Descartes is right and our existence is locked into our conscious thinking minds, can our subjective experiences contain something whose perceived reality supersedes the objective world outside of our brains? When I was a kid, alien abductions were everywhere. Fire in the sky, unsolved mysteries, all kinds of shit tailor-made to scare the living hell out of us, and boy did it work. I'm talking well into my teens. Whenever I was walking alone at night, part of me was looking out for the aliens. So one day after baseball practice, I was waiting for my father to come pick me up, and he must have been running late because the sun had gone down. I was all alone standing next to this barn by the baseball field, listening to the hum of a Pepsi machine when it happened. Out of the dark, a beam of light poured down on me suddenly from above. Holy shit, it's real! It's all real! It was just the light on the side of the barn turning on in the night. But in that moment, my single greatest fear had been conjured into reality. Now, it is objectively false that aliens were beaming me aboard their ship. But when that light hit me, objective reality could not have meant less. There was only what was real to me in that moment, and what was real terrified me beyond measure. Subjective reality superseded objective reality in a way that decades later still stays with me. The light on the barn is only remembered in relation to the beam of a non-existent alien spacecraft. So with that being said, this is the story of the time I had a stroke. It's a funny story, not in the ha-ha sense, but in the how do you even begin to tell it sense. I've put a lot of thought into this and decided that simply describing the events in the order they happened is actually the worst possible version. So let's start at the end and work our way backwards. I'm sitting in the waiting room of the ER. This is the first and to this day only time I have ever been treated at a hospital. You see, an hour ago I had called this phone number where you can describe your symptoms and they'll give you pretty generic but free medical advice like go see a doctor or get some rest and drink some liquids. But when I called them and told them my symptoms, the woman on the phone said something I will never forget. She said, "Okay, sweetie, I want you to go to the emergency room as soon as you can because it sounds like you're having a stroke." That's not good. So I'm sitting in the emergency room lobby. My wife was parked in the car, and when she came inside, I will never forget her demeanor. She was trying with every ounce of herself not to look terrified, even though she was. She was trying to be brave, to show no fear so I wouldn't be scared. It was one of her finest hours and one of the many reasons why I love this woman beyond measure. After a minute or two, my name was called, and despite all the other previous signs, this is what worried me. That the emergency room listened to me describe what's wrong and thought, holy fuck, we need to treat this guy right now. They take me back and give me an MRI, and this is where something kind of bizarre happens. I realize that, inexplicably, I'm starting to feel better. The MRI comes back clean and I talk to the doctor. After answering his questions for a few minutes, he realizes what's wrong with me. I have allergies. Yep, allergy-induced vertigo. See, I had never had allergies before, but 6 months prior, I moved to Eugene, Oregon, which is known as the grass pollen capital of the world. So when pollen season hit, it hit me like a dump truck. It was such a severe scissor kick to my sinuses that it produced symptoms so disorienting that they were indiscernible from a stroke. That's the end of the story. He gave me a prescription for the allergies and another for the vertigo, and before dinner time, I was right as rain. It's a pretty anticlimactic and downright crummy story, huh? Well, now you know I didn't want to start with the ending, because all the really interesting stuff happened at the beginning. So I wake up and I feel like hazy death. I'm sick, only it's an unfamiliar sick that I can't identify. None of it feels familiar, and the alienness of all of it is kind of unsettling. I have class today, which normally means I walk a mile to campus, get some coffee, and go right until it's time for my first class. But I don't see that happening today. So I walk the 2 blocks to the grocery store. I don't even know what I'm going to get. I just hope it's something for whatever this is. I'm in the medicine aisle and I'm looking around, still half asleep and without my glasses, when I spot an antihistamine on the bottom shelf and bend over to pick it up. I stand up, but when I do, I drop the medicine. The entire right side of my body has just gone completely and totally numb. I try to walk but struggle to because my entire right leg is fast asleep. I reach up and touch my face. The fingers on my right hand tingle, so I try my left hand. The right side of my mouth feels like it's been shot up with Novocaine. I try walking again and stumble towards the front where the cashiers are looking at me with concern as I struggle out the door. I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. I limp back home and just sit at my desk to think about what I'm going to do. I'm having a stroke. I limp into the kitchen and make myself a peanut butter sandwich. I just really like peanut butter. I'm having a stroke. I sit there and I eat the sandwich and just reflect on the nature of this moment and of living and of my life. I'm having a stroke. As I take the last bite, I make my decision. I'm having a stroke. I limp into my bedroom, crawl into bed. I'm having a stroke. Kiss my wife on the forehead and whisper, I love you. She makes a half-asleep whimper confirming that she heard me and she appreciates that. Then I roll over and I go to sleep, supremely confident in the fact that I was having a stroke and I would never wake up again, but happy that my last words were to tell my wife that I loved her. Then I woke up a few hours later. My wife asked me how I felt. I told her, and she told me about this phone number you could call to ask medical questions and get free general medical advice. I didn't have a stroke, but you already knew that. But the part of the story that's always stayed with me wasn't the fear of believing I was having a stroke, but my reaction to that fear. I was afraid. I was so perilously afraid that I couldn't ask anyone for help. Too scared to do anything but lie down and wait for death. If you were to ask me why, I couldn't even begin to answer that. Nor do I know what that reaction says about me or my mental health, other than to say that looking back on the timeline of my life, the story of that day wasn't the day I learned I was allergic to grass pollen. It was the day that I had a stroke, because the stroke was more real than anything that actually was.